Hello everyone. Today I want to make a video talking about the education system, and I want to make this video for the adults of the world. For the adults of the world who are past school age, I want to have a conversation with you all about the education system because there's a lot of reasons why I'm doing this. First of all, I do work in teaching. We're going to come back to that in later in this, exactly what that's about and how my experiences have affected that. And I feel that there is a lot of things that a lot of adults don't actually have the information about as far as the current education system. So I'm currently teaching in the United Kingdom. I have taught in the United Kingdom for a while. I've taught many different subjects, actually. I've taught maths, chemistry, physics, religious studies, dance, drama, and did I do music as well? Performing arts. And I think that's it. I think those are the main subjects that I've taught. And I've taught in all the way from kids as young as like 3. I've taught all the way up to like full-blown adults. I've taught in schools. I've taught in colleges. I've taught in universities. I've taught online. I've taught in person. I've taught homeschools, at homeschooling like communities. You name it, I've done it, okay? So I have a lot to say about this. Also, I've been studying a lot about the education system in the United States of America, which is something I haven't mentioned, but I have been studying it for a few years now. And I would love to actually go and work in a school in America for a little while, just to get like hands-on experience. Now, what I want to talk about, the reason why I want to talk about this and why it's so important is because a lot of people have a lot of things to say about the younger generation today. A lot of people have a lot of negative things to say about the younger generation, and especially their attitude towards school, also to the education system. So I want to kind of give a different perspective from my side from teaching, right? And just to give some information that I don't think people realize. We're going to end maybe on the fact that I think the education system is going to crash, which is essentially what I believe is going to happen. I believe the education system is going to crash. I can speak for in the United Kingdom as we speak. What is happening in the United Kingdom, particularly in the subjects that I teach at the moment, which is maths, chemistry, and physics, probably will end up teaching biology at the rate I'm going, and here even the reason why I am teaching, well, because the system is failing the kids. The education system right now is massively problematic. So the education that a lot of you guys would have had is not how the education system is now. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles I have with talking to parents and adults who are, because I'm 26 years old, mind you. So even for me, it's changed a lot since I was in school, right? So one of the issues I have with a lot of adults these days, especially speaking with parents, is that they have this idea that school is as it was when they were in school, that their kids, if their kids aren't doing well, is just because their kids are not paying attention. It's because their kids are on their phone. It's because their kids are doing all this other stuff. When in actuality, there are more levels to what's going on inside schools than what people are talking about. So for example, I know a 14-year-old in school, in the United Kingdom, right? This 14-year-old that I know of, in terms of their subjects, like, we'll talk about the core subjects for now, because those are the most important ones, right? In terms of subjects like English, instead of being learning, because I was asking, I was like, why aren't you learning stuff like, and there's the reason why I don't teach in schools, guys, by the way, guys, anymore, is all going to be outlaid in this, because you're going to see all my reasons why I cannot work in the machine that is the current education system when I know that it's destroying the children. So this 14-year-old is learning English, but instead of doing English is being asked about deeper things like to do with people and judging people's behavior and who did this and who did what. You know, I'm hearing discussions such as, oh, well, this character doesn't really have a good control of their emotions, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, if you're doing English, you should be focusing on the grammar, the spelling, the punctuation. You should be focusing on how to write, a proper letter. This is the stuff that I learned in school. You learn how to write a letter, which times you have to speak with this language, which times you have to speak with that language, how you construct proper sentences, when you know how to change a paragraph because you're changing your thought of whatever. It's writing skills, it's English, but instead, there's a larger focus right now. And I know because in the UK, they changed it years back while I was still in school. They changed it so that grammar was no longer something that was being taught. So what are the kids learning in English is my question. Then on the flip side, when you go to the subjects that I teach, I'm teaching up to 17-year-olds at the moment, maths, physics, and chemistry. And I can tell you that it's more difficult, far more difficult than what I did, because I remember what I did. So even me with my degree in chemistry and whatnot, I'm seeing that these guys are doing things that I did years later. Some of the stuff that I'm having to look at in order to prepare for my lessons are from my degree. So one of the things that's affecting the children is that some of the subjects that they're doing, like subjects like English, are becoming a lot more woke, a lot more of this just indoctrination of these ideas of this, that, and the other. And then other subjects like maths and science and chemistry and all this types of stuff, like I'm saying, for my personal opinion, those curriculums should be completely rewritten. Most of the questions these kids are being asked to do is not relevant for what you need to know as an adult at 18 years old. And this is my problem. We should be evaluating, the education system should be set up and the curriculum should be done in such a way that these kids are learning stuff that makes them into where they need to be by 18 years old. Whatever their career path is, what you do past there is up to you. If you then decide you want to go be a doctor, fine. If you decide you want to go and pursue a career in sales, fine. You shouldn't have to be pushed to these much more difficult levels of questions, which I enjoy these questions, by the way, because I'm into it. I'm into science. I love maths. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, if this isn't where I want to go, why are we distressing young people, teenagers, trying to understand these complicated things when they may not even want to go into these fields, and then they end up being judged, even not getting the opportunities to study at the universities they want or get the jobs that they want because they didn't get the certain grades. But then we're looking at the content of what they have to learn, and it's unnecessarily difficult. And it is unnecessarily difficult, guys, because it's true what a lot of people say. How I'm not going to apply this in my real life. Fair enough, because a lot of the stuff that people are learning, they are genuinely not going to apply in their real life. I understand where the young people are coming from when they say stuff like this, because it's true. They're really not going to apply this in their real life. So why are they being asked to do this now? Right? So, and again, if you ask me, I don't think majority of adults could even do what a lot of these kids have to do. If it was up to me, and I'm praying the Lord will allow this to happen one day, that all parents, all adults, and all teachers should sit the same exams as the students. Because if they did, I'm sure that the adults could not do it. And then we would realize that we have a serious issue on our hands. So that's the first thing. And then just that takes us nicely into this indoctrination, which I'm seeing everywhere. There's all these new degrees I'm seeing popping up in Western society here and in the US, all these new topics that teachers are teaching. Teachers are taking the time to really teach what they feel is their opinion on the children. Like, you guys know, I'm a very deeply, I'm very dedicated to God. I'm very dedicated to the Lord type of person. But when I'm teaching my lessons, I don't talk about any of that. I teach what I came to teach. If I'm teaching maths, I'm teaching maths. I'm teaching chemistry, I'm teaching chemistry. I'm teaching physics. That's all I came to do. It's not my job to tell you what I think about what you believe. It's not my job to tell you what I believe, because that's not my place to say it. I just come and I teach you my lesson and I move on, right? But unfortunately, that's not happening, right? And I have an issue with how a lot of parents are not really doing anything about that, if I can be completely honest with you, because sometimes I'll hear, like, for example, I'll hear some really inappropriate things going on in the schools. Again, this same 14-year-old who I know, when they were still 13, had this book that they were reading in school. And in this book, there was 2 women having sex, right? Why is this a book that's being selected for 13-year-olds? Again, I'm asking these questions. Why are we not asking more questions as adults? I'm now into my adult ages of working with kids. So now it's actually twigging for me. So I'm like, how is it that there seems to be such a small amount of other adults who are seriously addressing any of this? How is it? I even asked this kid, I was like, did any parents come into your school to talk about this? No. So that's why I have an issue when people say, oh, the younger generation are like this. I'm like, but what are you doing to change it? Because for some of us, the way I teach my lessons, I teach maths, science in a way that's not taught in school. And in my ways work, right? There's not been one student who can't do it, because I've recognized I was a victim of the same system, and I figured out a way that I can teach these things that it actually makes sense to people. And it's not just these weird things that you're just being taught. Not to mention the fact that because the students are actually getting more intelligent, what they're doing, at least in the UK, I can speak for, is they're making it harder because people are doing so well. So the grades are becoming even harder, and now it's becoming normal. I know that was not last GCSE, but the GCSE before. Actually, was it last GCSE as well? I can't remember. But the GCSE before, one of the top marks was like 50% to get like the top mark. Why? Because the papers are so hard, because they're trying so hard, because people are actually getting more intelligent. But then if you miss by a couple of marks, whatever, then you end up on the wrong grade. Then you end up not being able to get the career you want. You end up with all the adults saying that kids don't focus, kids are on their phone playing games. Not to mention that a lot of the education system is outdated. We, the adults, have allowed for society to become this technological. I don't know if I've mentioned this on my channel before, but even when Apple started, did you know that Apple's target audience was 13 to 15 year olds? When Apple first started releasing iPhones, was 13 to 15 year olds. Why? Because they knew that if you release it to 13 to 15 year olds, the kids are going to nag the parents. The parents might be like, us adults, had not having the kids involved, might have been like, who the hell was paying that for a mobile phone, before we all knew what the capabilities were. Look where we are now. The target audience was 13 to 15 year olds because they're the age that are going to understand what it is, be able to do it, and hound their parents to buy it for them. So I think we have to also accept at this stage, this is why education technology is becoming a big thing. A lot of teachers who have left teaching have left to education technology. And this is why it's becoming a big thing, because we can't just expect that the kids are not going to wake up and are not going to move with the times, especially when so much of what we do, if we're being honest as adults, includes technology. Right? So let's just have that in mind. Also, the other thing I want to just address quickly is the teachers, and the teachers leaving is a big thing. In the US, it's the same. And here, I've seen a lot of the US teachers are leaving for the same reasons as people here. You are overworked, underpaid, underappreciated. There are less and less, parents are taking less and less accountability for their own kids. You know, parents are even expecting like, oh, well, yeah, you know, a teacher will say to a parent like, sorry, you know, your child didn't do the homework, and that I was set, then the parent will be like, oh, cool, can you just get them to do it? Like, they just stay with you for an extra hour? Like, why is it back on the teacher? And I have to say this, that a lot of teachers have felt it. I have certainly felt it as well. This kind of like, well, we're expecting you to actually go higher than above than just your job as a teacher now, and become like a parental figure, which, bearing in mind, let's remember that if you're a teacher, let's say you teach one subject in, say, like a secondary school or like a high school, you have got a potentially at minimum of maybe 2 to 3 minimum sets of like 20 plus kids that you have to teach a subject to of different levels. You have to mark all of their different work. You have to adhere to all of their different needs. In a classroom setting, I've experienced this myself in the classroom. You have one student who will finish all of the work in 10 minutes for the whole lesson. And the rest of the lesson, you give them extra work, they finish that in 5 minutes. You give them extra work, they finish that in 5 minutes. 20 minutes, they're done. Then they want jobs of things to do because they're bored, especially when you're dealing with the younger kids, right? The much younger kids. You have another student who can't do it, who can't even successfully write down a date and a title and learning objectives, right? And you will spend half the lesson helping them to write a date and underline it, and a title and underline it, and learning objectives at the start of the page. So when parents are putting all this pressure onto the teachers to say, we need you to do this as well, on top of it, can you stay an extra hour with my child? It's like, do you know there's at least 100 students whose parents could ask this very same question? Where is that entitlement? And again, that is actually not our job. But unfortunately, between the school systems and between the parents, this is becoming a loud type of behavior where we have expected now to have to kind of rise to the occasion of, oh, well, you need to do more as a teacher, when already teachers are paid poorly. It's one of the most poorly paid jobs. It saddens me. You know, there's a lot of teachers in the US I've seen who talk about how because I'm part of a lot of like, you know, I try to follow a lot of these groups of teachers around the world and stuff to figure out what it's like around the world. A lot of these teachers, they have to pick up just other jobs, right, in the summer just to keep up their work, because people are like, oh yeah, but your pay stretches over. It doesn't count. And also, let's not forget that most teachers take home stuff to mark at home. Marking is a very long process. Can I just say it's a very long process, because you're going through, again, all of these different kids that you have. You have to actually read through the stuff. You have to actually do it properly, because this is their education at stake. Can I just remind everybody, this is their education at stake. So if you're not, you know, conscientious in your approach to doing this, then this could cost this child's career potentially, right? So there's that to take into account as well, as far as the teachers, not to mention the fact that a lot of times, you know, what was I going to say? I've completely forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, so then it makes it hard for teachers anyways to want to do the job, because the thing that you would love to walk into an environment where you have the time to plan something engaging and beneficial to the students that you've been able to get to know well, that would help them to learn properly. But the reality is a lot of teachers don't get to do that because they're so overwhelmed with all this pressure, on top of the fact that the governments are changing the curriculums and the specifications left, right, and center. So it's not even like you can just take the stuff that you've done and adjust it, or use the same stuff you did before and just improve it. You're now having to redo things all the way from scratch. And then because of how society is moving forward, I remember there was one school in the US where they requested to some teachers that they needed to get all of their their planning for the whole year done in July so that they could show it to the parents. Now, I don't have an issue with showing it to the parents. I think that's great. In fact, I actually would more than encourage a stronger system of parents being able to go into schools and observe what's going on in classrooms. Like for me, with my own teaching that I do, I'm always encouraging the parents, stick in, like stay in, like please be there, please watch, tell me what you think would help your child more. That I think is healthy. I think there is a need for, if we're going to go down the public education route, there is a need for a stronger parent-teacher relationship, because that's actually what's going to help the kids the most. If you're not going to teach your own children, say at home, which I'm going to talk about homeschooling in a bit as well. And so that's my perspective on that portion of everything. But then now let's move over to the fact that the education system is just crashing. So for those of you in the United Kingdom, you've probably heard there's a whole bunch of stories of things that are happening. There are buildings that have been taken down. Again, I know a child personally who is currently out of the actual physical building of a school because a school has been found to have, from the Department of Education, that it's not wise to let the students in the school. Have we been given details? No. Have they told us exactly what it is? No. Are they saying, is it possible that this child who's 14 years old that is going to then have to do their GCSEs in the next 2 years, are they going to get back to be inside a building in a classroom? No. In fact, they've been given these temporary accommodations that are just essentially these steel cans that they're living in, they're doing their lessons in, which they're not in right now. Why? Because despite the organizations above saying we're going to guarantee this type of safe temporary accommodation, whatever you want to call it, until later next year when there's an even better version of this safe accommodation that can last for years. Despite that promise being made earlier this year, a couple of months ago, now they're saying, oh, well, we need to extend the use of this short-term temporary accommodation, which is actually not fit for the current weather. So now the kids have to learn from home. So now the kids are learning online. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, because this stuff breaks my heart, guys. This absolutely shatters my heart, because the kids don't deserve this. And no one is going to care about this when they get older. That's what frustrates me, because I've had the experience of being a child and coming into adulthood. No one cares about what the reason was why anything happened when you were a child. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that, so when we're here now, let's not pretend as if these things are small issues that we should just be overlooking. Why is it that an education building that these kids have been in school for 4 years, now all of a sudden in August, the Department of Education in the United Kingdom has decided, oh, we don't recommend. They didn't say you shouldn't go in there. They said we don't recommend it. So obviously no one with their right mind who cares about kids is putting their kids in that building, right? But we also don't know what it is, because they're also not sharing that information, which should be shared to the parents. So it's like, how are you going to do this? And then they're like, oh, we'll just do lessons from home. But then the parents have work and stuff to go to. You see what I'm saying? And so this brings me to my point of so that's just one thing. And then there's other schools being shut down for all sorts of reasons. They're realizing this concrete that was built in the 70s was actually this and all this stuff. So we've just got the physical buildings crashing. Not to mention the fact that kids aren't doing well. I'm a person who has parents literally asking me, private school parents, most of the kids that I started teaching with will come from private schools. So their parents are already paying upwards of £6,000, Great British pounds, per term for their child to go to school. And it's still not enough. They still have to look for somebody else. And somebody else is having a better impact than what they're paying for private school. Not to mention the fact that private school kids are doing 8:30 till 6 at school. Why are you at school for so long? You're a child, you're 16, you should not be spending that many hours in school. You should not be spending so much time in school to then come and then still do a session to still be doing extra lessons with me and this, that, and the other. And then parents saying, hey, if I pull my kid out of school, will you just teach them the whole curriculum? Because the education system isn't working. How is that happening, ladies and gentlemen? And so that brings me to, why I'm so passionate about homeschooling, which is something I researched for a long time. I've researched homeschooling more than I've researched the other types of schooling, if anything, because I always knew that I would always want to have the option to homeschool my children, because I would never want to be put in a position where I need to pull my kid out of school and I can't because I don't know how to teach them, which is one of the reasons I even completed my degree in the first place. Because I was like, it's very mathematical, very scientific. Chemistry is a good middle point between biology, physics, and maths. And so if I have that, I can do English because I have to already know how to do English, especially in science. You have to be able to write these long papers and all this stuff that we have to do. And then other subjects you can easily learn in your own time more easily. So I was like, great, I feel prepped for homeschool, which I do feel prepped to homeschool my kids, by the way. And I do have strategies, and I will be, for anybody on the winning team who ever decides you want to homeschool, don't worry. If you ever decide that, I got your back. We're going to do this. This is why we call the winning team, because we're not victims and things are going down in the world. When the education system crashes, listen, your girl's got a plan. Your girl's working on the plan as we speak. That's why I've been working 13 hours per day and all this craziness. But homeschooling is something I think people really need to actually genuinely consider. Now, what I think people need to do is take away your initial assumptions that you have around homeschooling, which is that my child is going to be stuck at home, sitting at a desk, writing, and I have to teach them this, and they're not going to have any social interaction, blah, blah, blah. No. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about homeschooling. I'm talking about homeschooling that is just creating education as a lifestyle. That's basically what I'm working on in my own little, project that you guys will hear about at some point, is making education a lifestyle. So it's understanding your child as parents. I believe, especially as parents, your job, especially for us as women, is to observe your kids from when they're young, to help them to figure out what path they should take and what they're interested in, and help them to get onto that path. That's why I believe children need to have a childhood, because in childhood, they discover their interests, they discover what they're good at, they discover what they're into, and then we harness and we nurture that. Like, I feel like that's the job of like a mother, especially, but also fathers, right? I'm speaking from I'm speaking from a woman's perspective. You nurture whatever it is that God has placed inside of them, and you bring them on that pathway, because the idea is that by the time your child leaves home, it's not that you just kick them out at 18 because they're an adult. It's that you send your child off. This is my biblical understanding of what God intended for us, is that you send your child off when they have the tools in order to live their own life. And in fact, the only time the Bible even talks about leaving home is when he says, and man shall marry his wife, shall leave his mother and father and cling to his wife. So to me, that suggests that you don't just leave and then go and figure it out. You're supposed to have things figured out to an extent, and then you go and start to take your steps of independence with a clear plan of exactly what you're going to do. And I honestly believe that the fact that we have so many adults today who, as soon as they, move out and they're left alone, people are confused. People are spending all of their 20s, a lot of their 30s, sometimes even past, even into their 40s. People having midlife crises because they haven't worked out what to do, because they're still trying to figure it out as an adult. They're going to go back and do the work they should have done as a kid. It's hard for them to do now because they're an adult. So they don't have a free spirit and an imagination. They've given up. And I'll tell you guys something. I truly believe that everybody's purpose is always in their childhood, of whatever they wanted to do as a child. And that those things have to be harnessed and nurtured in a healthy environment. There are some students, I don't believe all students are supposed to be good, are going to be good at everything. I say this to my students all the time. I'm like, look, you're not all going to be good at everything. You're not all going to be, you have to find what you're good at, and you have to invest in it, and you have to get serious about it. That's why there's a lot of people, they might go into school, they might struggle in school, they hate school, right? But then they just so happen that their uncle, runs a plumbing company, and they volunteer on the weekends. Turns out that they're an absolute natural. Turns out that they're better than even the people studying plumbing, and that's making them an income, that's giving them a lifestyle. That is the way I believe God intended for it, is that you find what you're good at and it's nurtured. And that's what I see with homeschooling is so much more easily done, because in homeschooling, you get to utilize the world as God gave it to you. So for me, if you're doing lessons to do with science and whatnot, there is a whole world to go out and you can go and look at the animals. You have to look at a PowerPoint of the animals. Let's go to see the animals. Let's go look at the animals. Let's go and investigate what they're doing. And let's do things in a practical sense, right? Even chemistry, there's so many practicals that can be done at home that are fun things to do with how you actually live your lifestyle, this, that, and the other, right? Mathematics, there are so much math that we learn as adults that would have been helpful to have learned instead of learning this other maths that we were doing. That's actually practical to the lives that we live, right? We talk about the other, the different subjects that you have to do. There's things you can do that are proactive, exploring the world, exploring the things around you. I don't think, as I'll be honest, as somebody who's worked in education, if you ask me, I don't think kids should be spending more than maybe 10 hours a week sitting down, writing. something or calculating something. I believe majority of the work should be out and about, or doing things or trying things. There's so many cool things you can use these days that help for education. For example, if you're teaching physics and mechanics, Lego does an incredible line called Technic, which I will most definitely be using in my own mechanics and physics lessons one day, because these are Lego structures that you can make, but they are based on real life mechanics, like scientific physics theory. So again, you're interacting those two things together. A lot of the games that people play today, again, can be utilized for education. I feel like, for example, Minecraft is a great one, because on Minecraft, you go on there, you start on land, there's nothing there. You have to just figure it out. You have to figure out how you're going to build a house. How are you going to build this? What materials do you need to build that? It's not 100% accurate, but it's a lot more engaging. You can set tasks. You can make these tasks more fun. So you're also engaging the children in games that they're a part of. Then you can engage them in things in the world, historical places you can go to visit, geography, going and looking at different things, right? And understanding, and then going and exploring places, taking observations, coming home, doing the research of what this means and all of this type of stuff. All of a sudden, education becomes so much more fun for the kids. All of a sudden, you as a parent also are spending more time with them. And I really believe that God created us as men, as parents. I'm not a parent, but but I have worked with hundreds of kids, if not maybe thousands at this point, but hundreds definitely. But he created us to, because I've asked God, like, God, what is it that is our role as parents? More than just what I hear a lot of parents say, unfortunately, which is like treating their kids like a dog, which is like feed them, clothe them, and give them somewhere to live, and that's the job. And I think it doesn't stop there. Now, I want to address a very clear issue that I know some of people who, if they're people might be watching this, are thinking, which is, what do we do with the fact that us as adults now have subscribed to a society where we are unavailable to actually be able to look after the children? And I think this is something that we should not take as something that is a stopping force, but as something that is to be addressed and discussed. Because at the end of the day, your child's progression in life is what's on the line here. Your child's mental health is what's on the line here. Your child's ability to function as an adult is what is on the line here. So I think us as adults need to start holding governments and organizations accountable to the fact that we are to be parents. I think this is one of the most demonic turns of society, which happened as a result of the Industrial Revolution. As I read about in the book 21st Century Business by Robert Kiyosaki and another gentleman. And in there, he talked about how in the Industrial Revolution, prior to the Industrial Revolution, we did live a more season-based society where, again, historically, parents would teach their children. Historically, that's how it actually was before we came to the modern society. After the Industrial Revolution, we have these big businesses that need as many workers as possible, which is really what the education system is creating your children to be, the perfect workforce for these big, huge organizations, not for their own lives, not for their own even stability. Case in point being COVID-19, when many people lost their jobs, so much for stability. Some of us who were working for ourselves actually found out that we had way more stability in the fact that we knew what we would do. We were in control of our own jobs, and our jobs were unaffected. So I'm not trying to say that it's not the right option to work in for somebody else. I think it's great to work for somebody else. I've worked in many incredible jobs, don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is that we are not victims in this society, and we do have the power. If enough adults were to stand up and say, we need to change the work schedules so that adults can be there for their children, so that children can be looked after more readily, right? Especially now being the perfect time when there's so much of this work from home business going on. We need to take the accountability back for the kids, because like I said, we can make all the excuses that we want to make, which one of the reasons why, guys, I left a lot of the jobs I was doing. One of the reasons I left London altogether, well, it didn't even have to be London, but I left the stuff I was doing and I started to do a lot of my stuff online, is because I was like, I need to be able to be available for my family. I'm not comfortable with hiring people. And why would I work extra time to pay for a childminder? We need to figure out how we're going to make this work. And I also know a lot of stay-at-home mums, ironically, but I also know a lot of women who work careers, who have children as well, who make it work, and again, this is where the whole thing about community and villages comes into it, because again, somebody like myself, I'll be more than happy to help homeschool other kids in my community. more than happy, while other parents are doing whatever they're doing. And again, so this is what I mean. It's like we're talking about the problems. I'm outlaying the problems that I feel like are necessary for, you know, the adults to understand of today, so that hopefully we can take these things, take these conversations, and go back and actually start thinking. Because I'll tell you guys now, I'm just saying this now, whether you believe what I'm saying or whether you don't, whether you change anything as a result of what I said or you don't, it's completely up to you and it's completely fine. All I'm saying is the education system is crashing in all areas. I'm seeing the same thing happening in the US. All the same things that are happening in the UK are the same things I'm seeing happening in the US. The teachers are talking about it. They're leaving teaching. That this is so desperate. I've seen now that there's so many classes where they're just hiring anybody that's old enough to stand in front of a bunch of students. So now your kids are really not getting the education that they deserve. So I'm just saying, while the situation is brewing, this is our opportunity to start thinking in our communities, in our places where we're at, what exactly are we going to do to make sure that these kids are looked after, because it's not their fault. They're not the ones who decided to they didn't decide to bring themselves into this world. None of us decided to be brought into this world. And I'm sure if we all think about how truthful that is and how it is being alive today, based on the fact that we did not decide to be here, that I think we should learn from that and not continue on the tyranny and the resentment of like, well, we just, I'm working it out and I just have to figure it out and they just have to figure it out. If we're really the caring, loving adults who really care about children, which I really think the Western society hates children now, to be honest, it really breaks my heart. If we really care about children the way that we say that we do, then it's our time to actually think about how are we going to strategize this differently? How are we going to change our life? How are we going to sacrifice certain things as well? Because yes, there is sacrifice in looking after young people. Even for me, I'm not even a parent yet, but I've already sacrificed some things I would prefer to do, knowing that this will be for the betterment of my child, because I don't want my child to be looked after by somebody else, number one. Number two, I don't want my child to be disadvantaged, because can I just say something as well? There are teachers who just don't like some children. There is that. There are teachers who are horrible to some children. Some of the things that I've heard from children is absolutely upsetting. Some of the things that teachers have said, not to mention a lot of teachers, when they don't believe your child is capable, just give up. Case in point being one of my current students, probably the most natural mathematician student I've ever had, as in like she is her knowledge is not up to mine just yet, but her ability is probably far greater than mine. And she was told to stop, that she shouldn't bother studying maths by her teacher. And I have students like this all the time where they come to me and they're like, oh yeah, my teacher said I can't do this, my teacher said I shouldn't be bothered to do that, and they can do it. To the extent that one of the students that I was teaching was saying to me that she did an exam and that she did so well that the teacher thought she had cheated. And this is what your kids are up against. So then you go there, the teacher tells you something bad about your kid, you make your kid feel horrible, your kids tried their best, they just don't say anything, they start acting up, they start having all this behavior. You think, why has my kid got such bad behavior? Because you're not even listening to them, you don't even believe them, right? And then they're actually capable. The teachers always sometimes just give up on kids. It does happen. I see it happen all the time. I've seen it happen even in education, the way that other teachers would talk to me about certain students, right? And then your child is just done. And if nobody ever bothers to hear that child out, then you'll never know. And what a sad story for your child, and what a sad story for so many adults. I'm sure that's happened for so many adults. I am sure that there's so many adults out there who are capable of maths and science, who have dreams in that area, who never picked it up or continued because of their experience in school, which I'm also accounting for people like that in this project that I'm working on. Just saying. If there's any adults who want to revisit maths and science, just wait on it, everybody. But yeah, so how sad is that? So that's why I'm saying, and one of the number one pieces of advice I give to parents all the time is I say, believe your child. Whatever your child tells you is going on in school, whatever your child tells you about the teachers, believe them. Believe what they're saying, because so much of what I realize with kids and why they don't do well in school, or why they're struggling in life in general, because I've also done youth work outside of school. I've also done work in youth with kids who have been in juvenile prisons, or adult prisons, or tough backgrounds from different tough places. I've even been around the UK and worked in certain different areas that are known for different levels of crime, of all different types of people from different walks of life. And what I've noticed is that a lot of the kids, the barrier to their education is not their willingness or their attitude, or what they're doing in school. It's everything that's going on in their life behind the scenes, how they see themselves, if they even believe they're loved in the first place, if they believe they have a purpose, if anybody even believes in them. Because a lot of kids that I meet, I'm like the first person that they feel has ever believed in them in the first place. And that alone completely shifts their attitude towards the learning, because it's like, wow, somebody's actually believing me and giving me a chance and saying, hey, let's not even worry about what I say to them all the time, like, let's just shoot for the top. Don't worry about limiting yourself to, oh, I only want to get to here. But let's see if you can go, well, how high you can go. And let's leave the goal as high as it possibly could be. And let's just aim for that. And when you see that with children, it completely shifts their attitude to education. You don't have to tell them, can you please do this? Can you please do that? They do it themselves because now they're actually motivated. And I'm really passionate about this, if you guys couldn't tell. Because of all the things that I've seen, all the things I've experienced, and it breaks my heart for the kids. I've been in their position. It was actually easier. I believe the education system was better and easier when I went through it than what it is for them right now. So many of the kids with COVID, with all these changes in the UK, especially with all these schools being closed and stuff, it's so much harder for them. And so, yeah, I just thought I would share this with you guys. I'm definitely going to be homeschooling my own kids. I couldn't, for the life of me, put my kids into school. And I'm just a woman of faith. I believe in God. I'm like, God, if you give me kids, and if my kids are not getting what they deserve in school, I have enough faith to say to God that, God, I will pull them out and I will trust you to provide, because it's my job to be a parent of that child. So I'm not playing games with my kid. I'm just not playing games. It's not a privilege. It's a blessing in faith that I have with God. And so, yeah, so I just thought I would share that with you guys, because there's a lot of things to consider and a lot of things I think adults of today don't necessarily realize. I could even have gone on for longer, but I think this is enough. So let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions, guys. Anything that I can do to help, please let me know. If life's a game, then let's play to win. God bless you all, and I'll see you in my next one.